Okay, well, good morning, everyone. I'm Mary Predon. I'm the Director of Communications for the Hudson Gateway Association of Realtors, and welcome to another of our Breakfast with Benefit series. Today, we are going to be talking about the state of the insurance industry and find out, is your client's home uninsurable? A lot of crazy things going on in the insurance industry, and especially first-time home buyers that are coming from an apartment really have to be careful that they have the coverage that they need for their home. So without further ado, I would like to introduce our friends from Allen Block Insurance. We have Joanne Murray and Neil Bush, and they will be doing this presentation today. Again, any questions you can put in the chat, and we will address them as we go through. But welcome, Joanne and Neil.
Welcome. I'm happy to be here today. Just a few notes, as Mary said, it's a crazy time in the insurance industry. I have to say, in 40 years that I've been doing this, I've never seen it so difficult. Not only for people buying their first home, buying a new home, and people who their renewals come up and all of a sudden they get this notice that says they're being canceled. It's unprecedented what's going on. We have one company that's going into receivership, that actually Allstate owns them, and we were just blindsided by it. So it's important for you to understand what's going on, and it'll help you with your clients, because the worst thing for you is to get that phone call after they've signed a contract that says, I can't get insurance for this house. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Neil, and he'll start going through some of these issues with you.
Great. So welcome, everybody. I'm Neil Bush. I'm the Vice President of Personal Lines. So in my department, we're the ones speaking with your customers and clients who call us to get quotes on home insurance. I'll go into more detail about what we do. But right now, what's happening in the homeowners insurance market it's very volatile. And it's been, as Joanne said, it's been very different. It's marked by significant rate increases on property. People who have home insurance have seen these increases. They could be anything from 20 to 25% or more, depending on where they live, as far as the rates going up. There's been tighter insurance guidelines. The companies are putting more and more responsibility on the homeowner to maintain their homes and update it. Number one in that category is roofs. And we'll go into more detail on that, but they are inspecting roofs. They're using satellite imagery. They're using drone imagery to see what the condition of the roof is. And if they see dark areas, they're looking for the customer to get an inspection of that roof and justify that the roof still has time left. Rule of thumb on roofs, no moss, and they want a roof, I'm speaking asphalt roofs, that the roof is under 20 years old. Cedar roofs or wood roofs are a problem these days. It used to be some companies would take it if they're fire treated. Now it all has to go through underwriting for special approval on it. So if you see a home with a wood or a cedar roof, to mark that and say, you know what, make some phone calls and make sure this is going to be eligible. Territorial restrictions and moratoriums has been a real problem over the last 2 years. Companies have looked to scale back what they're writing in high-risk areas such as the Sound Shore or Long Island, or even some of the areas in the boroughs. And they've either put quotas out there or they've stopped writing in those areas for the period right now until things can level out. And this is due to severe storms, climate changes, and even changes in terrain. It seems every time a severe storm gets up here, it does significant damage, and the companies have looked to cut back on that. Joanne mentioned that there's a company going into receivership, so there are, and it's not just One company has affected the state significantly. It's a New York State reciprocal Adirondack Insurance Exchange that is now telling its clients to, or policyholders, find new insurance by December 31st because you'll have none here. And the state is allowing them to do that. So it's caused a real upheaval amongst many agents within the state and caused a lot of turmoil for a lot of policyholders. I already mentioned severe weather events such as Ida and some of the other tropical storms and hurricanes that have made it up here. And that has had a real problem on the industry. So your clients found the perfect home. And now we've got to try to insure it. The insurance process can create a lot of complications. It's good for when someone finds their home, start shopping immediately, start getting quotes, and have all the information available for that quote. The insurance company is going to want to know about all the updating that's done. Are they going to, they want to know about the type of heating system. They want to know if the electrical has all been updated and there's no fuses or stay block type boxes. They also want to know the heating system is being maintained annually and that all new parts are in the boiler, or especially if it's an oil furnace. Many people have switched over gas burners, but still they want to make sure it's been updated. As I mentioned, more responsibility is on the homeowner to get this information and maintain the home. Flood zones are an issue. We run that on every home we quote so that the person knows what the risk of flooding is. They may be in an X zone and not be required to carry it, but they might be next door to a severe flooding property, or they might be near a water source that can cause flooding. This recent storm we had that came up through the eastern seaboard, Debbie, we got an article that 72% of the properties that flooded were not in severe A or B flood zones. So things are changing, weather's changing, and it's good for a homeowner to be prepared and consider flood insurance. So we're an independent agent, and that what differs us. A direct writer is a company such as the ones you see on TV that represent only one company. They're also known as captive agents because they can only write for that company they represent. And those are for many of the companies you see on TV that do a lot of advertising. They're household names. People.
Recording in progress.
Hello? So we're an independent. We have access to multiple companies. We're appointed by these companies. We have authority to write up to a certain limit. We can write home, auto, rental properties, apartments, condos, co-ops, and even provide insurance for businesses. So it gives us a lot of flexibility, and it can be a time saver because we can do the shopping for them. We have certain guidelines we have to adhere to, but we also have relationships with many of these companies where we can at least discuss a risk and see if it qualifies. It's a very hands-on approach that we have. Once somebody becomes a client here, we handle everything. We've got an excellent team with a lot of experience that can handle anything from a billing question to a car change to analyzing a home policy for discounts and credits, and also going to the companies to make sure things are eligible so we can move on. And we are in multiple states and can consider multiple residences when needed. We also do recreational vehicles such as motorcycles, ATVs, and motorhomes. So eligibility for insurance. This has been a really, really tough couple of years because it used to be a few rules and we could move on. And it seems that this list is growing each year. I mentioned the roof age. A general rule of thumb is the roof's got to be under 20 years old and in good shape, no moss, no loss of granules, no shingles that are popping up or warped. They want to see that roof in pristine condition because that's when a storm hits, that roof can be severely damaged by the storm and then water can get into the home and we have a really large claim and they've been really, really tight and difficult to work with on that. Water claims. This is one of the biggest things that the companies have declared war on. Water damage is covered under a home policy, such as a broken pipe, water that comes in through the roof, water that wind-driven rain that can get in through a window, hot water heaters bursting, sewers backing up. So these are things companies want to make sure that the home is in good shape and can withstand. They're encouraging higher deductibles. They're encouraging water shutoffs. This is an automatic device that can shut the water down if you have a severe leak, such as a burst pipe in the wall. They want to make sure there's low temperature devices or sensors in the home so that people can monitor if the heat goes off while they're traveling and have somebody get in there and get it restored. So there's, again, more responsibility on the homeowners these days. Heating systems, I touched upon briefly, but they want to see that old furnace has been updated with new parts and been maintained regularly. Oil tanks, there's very few companies that will write a home with an oil tank that's still in the ground. And that's a real negotiating position to take when seeing a home, especially up in the northern part of the county here, where many of them still exist in your Somers, Bedford, Yorktown area. The companies don't want it. They've tried to put in exclusions for leakage of these tanks, but unfortunately they have not held up. And so therefore they've just stopped writing homes that have them. Pools, this has been around a while. They want to see that the pool is fenced. They want to make sure it has that self-locking gate, and they don't want diving boards or slides in there for obvious injury reasons. But that's pretty much been a standard. On the above ground pools, they like to see that it's, again, that it's in a fenced-in area around the back of the house. And if possible, get one of those ladders that can be pulled up so people can't just hop the fence and climb up it. Sump pumps are another thing that have become prevalent. We ask on every home policy for a number of reasons. One, it could be a sign that the house could take on water. And it's always good to make sure that they're maintained and updated and ready to go if we have a storm. Number two, they want to have a battery backup in it because power goes out all the time. If it's powered by a generator, even better. And also, if that sump pump fails due to water that backs up into the house, it sometimes can trigger coverage on the home policy and avoid having to report it to flood. Next slide, please.
Are there some questions in the chat or no? I was just looking. Go ahead.
So renovations. Again, this is a issue that has been going on for many years. The bottom line is the companies really do not like homes that are going to have significant or major renovations after purchase. And I'm going to say it many times, but when you purchase a home, move in. The time it takes to get the permits, the time it takes to interview contractors, the time it takes to even hire and get contracts and materials and get the work going can sometimes last months. And if that house is sitting there vacant, number one, the company, it's not eligible for home insurance. which means that when they go to closing, they won't have a home policy. They may have to do it under a builder's risk, which the banks won't accept. But also, homes that are under renovation and vacant are under its biggest exposure. There have been many claims over years for broken pipes, trespassers falling on the premises, combustibles left out by the contractors. These are things that all have to be discussed with the agent before making that decision to start the renovations. Again, move in first. Then we can, even if it's a few rooms and you stay on a weekend, occupy the home, make sure all the utilities are working, heat, electricity, cable TV, what have you, and occupy the home. It's easier to amend the policy to cover renovations than to write a new one on an empty vacant home. And also do your homework so that you are ready to go and get your permits, because these towns are taking forever and they'll make you come back several times just before they even get approved so you can hire a contractor. But these are things to discuss with the agent when you find that home that you want. Why your insurance might be canceled. There's a difference. There's cancellations and there's non-renewals. Non-renewals occur if you have a policy and the company sees something that's adverse, such as a loss history. In some cases, it can be more than one claim in 5 years. It could be also the condition of the home. They may have done a satellite image on it that they didn't like. They may have seen vacancy where people aren't living there and there's no furnishings. Or it's unoccupied and not in use. They find out that there's an Airbnb going on, or this has become prevalent with the imagery. There's too many trees overhanging the building and they want them cut back. This is something that has become more and more prevalent. They're looking to make sure that during those windstorms, a tree or a heavy branch doesn't come down and damage the home. The stay block electrical panels, they are still amazing to us, still a few of these around. The other one is Pacific Electric. These were put in homes back in the late 60s and 70s and can cause fire because they overheat and the breakers don't pop properly. So it's important to take a look at the box when looking at the home, doing your walkthroughs, and making sure that box has been updated with 200 amp service, because everybody has electronics these days, and TVs and major appliances and lighting and all sorts of things that are now in the house that can draw on that electricity. Coastal risks, that is all of a sudden, and this goes back to Adirondack and one of their parent companies. They're looking now that, hey, we wrote these policies in areas that are so close to Long Island Sound. We need to get these moved out of here right away, or we're going to get hit bad with the next tropical storm. So they have been non-renewing based on location. If somebody's right on the water, I would say they're going to be in a tough position. Question?
There's a question in the chat. She says, I just want to understand, the bank agrees to a renovation loan because the house is not livable in its current condition. It cannot be insured at all after the sale before renovations are complete.
So in this particular situation, the key word you used was renovation or construction loan. So the bank is under the understanding that the house will not be lived in for a certain period of time. And in that case, what would be done is a builder's risk policy would be written. And that's something that we would discuss and have to go to several carriers to get some offers on. So it's not that it can't be insured, it has to be insured. And the bank already knows it, so they will accept the builder's risk policy. They may set certain terms. What we've seen is mortgages be set up as if the person is buying the home and will occupy it, and then find out from us that we can't write it as a homeowners because we were told that they're not moving in and doing major renovations. That's where the problem stems. But in the scenario that you're putting forth, the bank already knows that the house is going to be worked on. Last thing is wind-prone zip codes. Like I said, we do a flood zone and a risk meter for all new homeowners to get an idea of where they're located, and then go to our list of companies to see who may be writing in that area. Okay, on this here, as I mentioned, the market has been very volatile. It's been a very unstable market, and it's been for many reasons. One is the increased cost of claims. Inflation has caused a big impact on what the cost of materials and labor would be to do work in the home to get you back to whole again after a major loss. Climate change is probably the biggest. I'm on a website that tells you when a tropical storm pops up down in the Caribbean, and I kind of track it, just hoping it doesn't get up here, but it's affecting other states. And the rates for insurance, of course, are based on the losses of across the country, and that gets factored in. So companies are watching that too. In climate change, we've had more and more hurricanes and tropical storms between June and November. In any event, any time in history, and you can see it. Florida is a very tough place to get insurance these days because of all the storms that hit down there. Cost and availability of materials. I think the availability has gotten better, but there was a time there where just getting enough sheetrock or flooring, or people have like been ready to move back in, they can't get the bathroom or kitchen fixtures they need. That has caused delays, and of course, the companies pay for additional living expense while you're not living in the home. So that number goes up accordingly when they can't get the right materials and get them installed for you. AM Best ratings. We mentioned Adirondack Insurance Exchange. They were not AM Best rated, they're Dematec rated, but they lost their rating. And that's what started the whole spiral where they're pulling out of New York State and shutting down and leaving a lot of policyholders to go and fend for themselves to get new policies. We represented them, and we are able to move those people to other companies, but there are a lot of direct writers who had them through a brokerage agreement, and these people are left trying to find an agent in another company. So there are some financial issues to take into consideration. It's always good to make sure that the company you're with or the company you're considering has an A rating, because you want them to be around. You don't want to be caught in that situation where you get a letter in the mail saying we're not going to insure you after December 31st. And that's something that we pay attention to and make sure that our companies communicate that to us. Okay, next, so Joanne's going to take it from here and talk about water damage, flood, and some other issues facing the industry. And again, if you have any questions, even if you think of any after the presentation, our email addresses are at the end. Please reach out. And also, please remember that we can run a flood zone for you too, if you want to show a home and see how it's impacted.
So I just want to, back up a little bit on this impact on stability of the companies. And, as Neil said, there are a lot of reasons why companies are pulling back and, being so strict on eligibility and underwriting. And, you know, all of a sudden, even what we call a wholesale market, which is a non-admitted market, even they've become more restrictive because investors don't want to invest in those markets because of all the claims and the fact that if the company's not going to make money, then they don't want to invest in them. So all of these things are impacting how the company reacts to so many issues, and that's what makes it more difficult for us and for your customers to get insurance. So a lot of the things that he talked about, you may see pop up, and just know that if you have questions about that, you know, just feel free to call one of us and talk it through, because we do have multiple markets, and sometimes, you know, like right now, one of the companies just sent us a whole list of zip codes in Westchester County that they're not going to write insurance in, and probably until January. We're hoping it's temporary. But when things like that happen, it just causes a disruption in the market because the other companies are inundated with requests for insurance, and they don't want to be taking more than they can handle because of the reinsurance. So it's complicated, but we're here to go through that with you and explain it if you have questions. I'm going to talk about the water backup. I think that the water backup is probably one of the most important coverages that a homeowner can have on their insurance. And it's not standard. Most policies you get, it's an option. You have to buy it. And it's amazing how it varies from one company will give you 5,000 coverage, another company gives you 50,000 coverage. One company says, if you don't have a sump pump, we won't give it to you. And another company says, you know, if you do have a sump pump, then that means you have a water problem and we're going to give you a limited amount. So it's crazy, but, you know, based on the need, we look at the company that we think will meet your need. If your home is on a slab and you don't have a sump pump, you know, the chances of needing the coverage are a lot less. And so we can, you know, look at the different companies and how they respond to that water backup. It is an optional coverage. It protects against water damage that's caused by sewer backup, drain backup, and sump pump failures. You know, Neil mentioned that the sump pumps need to have a battery backup. And the reason for that is that during a storm is the most likely time the electricity is going to go out and they're going to be without the sump pump. And that's when the water is going to back in. And that's why the companies are requiring batteries on the sump pumps. You know, the water, it protects against damage that's caused by a clogged sewer line, the failed sump pump, the backup of drains, the overflow of gutters, the malfunctioning appliances. All of these things can cause a water backup in your home. And I love this coverage because when there's a torrential rains and the sewer lines going out in the street are overflowing, and all of a sudden it's starting to back up into your home, and you don't have flood insurance, this is the one area that we go and we grab it and say, okay, thank goodness we have $50,000. We always try to get 50,000. That's usually the maximum you can get on policies. So water backup is something that every homeowner should have, because you never know when that's going to happen. It's probably the third most costly type of claim that we have, you know, behind fire and liability. And you know, many of the homes in Westchester are at risk because we have aging sewer systems. We have older plumbing in the homes, even the homes that have been updated, and you go in and they look beautiful, but the pipes behind the walls are still the old pipes. And you know, even a lot of the electrical, you know, if you ask someone if it's not gut renovated where they pulled out the sheetrock and put in all new pipes and electrical, you're at risk for things, you know, the pipes breaking and having sewer backup. I know one of the common ones that we get in the older homes is that they have clay pipes outside going underground, and those clay pipes now are starting to collapse. So again, this is what causes this sewer backup. It's a good thing to know that, and mention to your customers if they're concerned that if they buy water backup coverage, that it will protect them from those type of claims. Let's see, let me need you to flip these, Neil. Okay, so let's talk about flood insurance now. You know, how is flood insurance versus water backup? Well, flood insurance is, you know, usually the flood damage is caused by horrific rains that we've been having, and the ground gets saturated, the water seeps in through even the cement walls. It can seep through, it can hydroplane up through the floors, and companies will even deny sump pump failure when the sump pump is 3 feet under the water and there's no way it could have kept the water out. And they'll say, well, that's a flood. So we're seeing more and more flood damage, more flood claims in X zones, and X zones are supposed to be the safest zone that you can be in, that you don't need to have flood insurance. But we're finding that with the climate change, that there are more and more areas that are being damaged that are in X flood zones. Now, years ago, after Storm Sandy, FEMA wanted to go in and they wanted to redo all of the flood zones. And some of you might remember the lawsuits that went on, especially in New York City, fighting against changing all the flood zones. So FEMA had to get creative, and they decided to come out with a whole new rating system. So now their rating system, it doesn't even look at the flood zones. They're doing it differently because they now know, they do the latitude and longitude of your property, and they look at that and they determine what your risk of flooding is, look at the properties around you. So your rates now are more based on this information that FEMA has gathered. At the same time, the banks are only requiring it if you're in an AE or V zone, and because that's the only way that they can do it. They don't have any other way of figuring out that your X zone should have flood insurance. So we quote flood insurance with every homeowner policy that we sell, and give people the option. The government now requires homeowners to sign off and reject flood insurance if they don't want it when they're buying homeowner insurance. So, you know, it's important for the customer to think about what the risks are. When you ask us for a flood zone determination, we give you a form, and on that form, it will tell you how many losses have been in the area where that home is, what the chances of a loss are, and it will tell you how far they are from the nearest flood zone. And, you know, often I will say to someone, you're 200 feet from a flood zone. You probably should buy this because it's really hard to predict whether it's going to penetrate that flood zone and wind up with you having water in your home. So there are a lot of things to consider with flood insurance. We will run flood zones for you. We don't have to insure the person. Just call us. We're more than happy to run it, send you the information to help you with your customer in advising them. Because again, you don't want that call after they close and they have a flood and they're like looking at you like, oh, why didn't you tell me that this could have flooded? You hand them this form, tells them how far they are from the flood zone, tells them what the risk is, and they make the decision. And it really, you know, you can't look bad in that situation. Storm surge, I just want to mention that a little bit. That's an abnormal rise in the sea level. When one of the storms we had here a few years ago, we had the boats at the marina and the Hudson River went right over the railroad tracks and were, you know, on ground because of the storm surge. So storm surge isn't necessarily flooding from rain. It's more from the winds, and the strong wind pushing up against the ocean water, and then it pushes it towards shore. Some of those storm surges can be 20 feet high. So again, if you're coastal, if you're near the coast, even if you're in an X zone, people say, oh, my house is so high. And I'm like, yeah, but it doesn't mean you can't be impacted. So these are just some of the reasons that people should consider purchasing flood insurance. Okay, this is probably the number one question that we get, especially now. Why do I have insurance if I can't file a claim? And we are really, really discussing every claim with customers before we submit them. We're letting them know what the consequences might be if they file the claim, that they could be non-renewed. Most companies won't non-renew if you only have one claim in 5 years. That's a long time. It used to be 3 years. Now it's 5 years. You have 2 claims in 5 years, the chances are your company's going to non-renew you, and no one's going to want you, and you're going to wind up in the wholesale market, and those rates can be double, triple what you're paying now. So yeah, why do I have insurance if I can't file a claim? It's a good question, but you have to look at your insurance these days as catastrophe insurance. We're encouraging higher deductibles. We're encouraging people to make sure they maintain their home, because your insurance policy is not your maintenance contract. It's there for that major claim. And that's the reason why you might as well save whatever you can by going with higher deductibles. So talk to your agent before you talk to the company. Again, that's a reason for an independent agent. You're not calling the company directly. You're not calling Travelers directly. You're calling us. We're talking you through it. We're saying, okay, go get the estimates first. Let's see how much over your deductible it is. Let's see what the impact is, what it's going to cost you out of pocket. And let's talk about what will happen if we put this claim in. So again, make sure you talk to your agent, absorb as much as you can financially. Small claims should not be reported. You should look at your policy as a disaster policy. Condominiums, just want to touch on this a little bit. Townhouse versus a condo. With a townhouse, you have more of the more responsibility for ensuring your service equipment. Sometimes with condos, you don't have your heating system. It's a shared heating system, and the water heaters and things like that. So, it depends on the unit. If it is a townhouse, we like to see the bylaws. We like to make sure. Sometimes people don't even know. There are townhouses that are insured as condos, and there are townhouses that are insured as a home, and when they're responsible for everything. So it's important to know what type of insurance they need to buy. Many of the condo buildings now, especially the older ones, have water problems. The pipes are starting to leak. That's probably the biggest problem. The insurance companies are starting to gather details on that, and they're looking at the buildings. And if we submit to a quote for a building that has numerous water claims, even though it's not the unit you want to buy, the company might say, we're not interested in writing units in that building because it has too many water leaks and they haven't replaced the pipes. So, just keep that in mind. We can do a clue report if the buyer will share their name, date of birth, and their current address, and we can, get a history of if there have been any leaks in that unit. We've been recommending that people put water bugs in their condo units. Unfortunately, unless the association puts a water shutoff valve on the main water lines in the, usually in the basement or wherever their service equipment is. Most of them don't want to do that. So I know of one building that actually told all the unit owners they had to get these water bugs. They put them underneath the sinks, they put them in the bathroom, that way if a leak starts, they're going to get notified. They can get it with the ring. You can buy it with that. You can get them at Home Depot. They're very inexpensive. And every time someone buys a condo, I explain it to them, and most of them are like, oh yeah, I want that, there's another, it's called Ting, and you buy this and you plug it into any plug in your home, and it will monitor the electrical currents throughout your home and tell you if there's anything dangerous going on. These are inexpensive things that people can get, and that will help to keep from having a claim and possibly losing your insurance in the end. Again, it is important to review the bylaws. Some of them are very antiquated. They haven't been updated. And the problem is, if they do amendments and it's not all together, when I ask for a copy of it, I don't know how it's changed. Building associations are having a hard time getting insurance, affordable insurance for the building. And so a lot of them are changing the bylaws and pushing more and more responsibility to the unit owner. Things that they used to do, the bylaws used to read, we'll cover everything in your unit, kitchens, bathrooms, everything that we originally installed, and you just have to cover the upgrades. That's changing a lot. A lot of the associations now are saying, hey, you shut the door, sheetrock in is all yours. So, it's important to know how the association is handling a claim. Non-pays. I'm just going to touch on this, and it sounds like a strange thing to just be bringing up, but probably just for your knowledge, the insurance companies hate non-pay notices. They hate when they have to send out a notice that says your payment's late and you have to make a payment. Once in a while is okay, but it's really interesting how many people wait for the notice that says that you're going to get canceled before they make the payment. And what 3 of our companies are doing now is, if that happens, after 3 of them, they're telling you either pay it in full or they're not going to renew your policy. So, this is just for your information. Putting it on EFT is probably the best thing that you can do. A lot of companies now are charging for you to use your credit card, just like when you go to restaurants and everywhere now, every time you want to use your credit card, they're charging you to use them. Well, the insurance companies are starting to do that too. So the EFT is becoming the cheaper way to pay your premiums if you're going to pay on installments. So just keep that in mind. It's just a small FYI. Okay, so what do you do if you get a cancellation or a non-renewal letter? The first thing you're going to do is call your agent and find out if there's a way to remedy the situation. Very often the companies they'll come back to us and they'll say, hey, if this person trims the trees back, if they get the moss off the roof, if they move the paint cans from around the heating system, we're willing to stay on it. And they'll give you 30 to 45 days to do that. And then, they'll rescind that notice. So the first thing you do is talk to your agent, see what you can do and if it can be remedied. Only in very, very small situations where the roof is so bad that it has to be replaced and there's just not enough time to do that, do we have to rewrite the policy, or does it get canceled? So, having a conversation with your agent is important. If you get alternate quotes, if your agent says there's nothing we can do, the company's made up their mind, the agent should start getting alternate quotes for you. If you're with a direct writer and they can't help, well, there are a lot of independent agents out there who have other options. You can always give them a call. Everyone is interested in trying to help you. So don't be afraid to make other calls. I think that pretty much wraps it up for us. If anybody has any questions?
Does anyone have any questions for Joanne or Neil? No, I had a quick question for you, if that's okay. If you go to sell your home, I'm looking at my home, my roof is probably more than 20 years old, but I don't want to pay to get a new roof if I'm going to sell the house. So who has, I guess, with today's market, somebody may just buy it and say, yes, I know there's a new roof, but I want a house so desperately. I'm not selling right now, guys, just so you know, but I would love to, but I'd have to go to Canada because I can't afford anything else. But what happens in that situation? Like they say, I'm going to buy the house. I know the roof is in bad shape, but I'm going to take care of it. Are they, and when they come to get their insurance, if the insurance company says, well, that roof is too old, we're not going to insure you, what happens in that case?
Neil, do you want to take that one?
Sure. Well, we've had situations occur like that. We've had both pre and we'd like to know it pre-sale so we can kind of guide the person. And also instruct them as to what the companies would expect of them. We did have someone who bought a home where the roof was in dire need of replacing. We had a conversation with the company. The people who were buying the house had all their ducks in a row and had somebody already ready to go to replace the roof. This particular company, and this is the advantage of having many companies, because not everyone has this, we were able to get an endorsement on the policy where they would not cover replacing a roof. They only covered depreciated amount if something happened before the replacement. And then we got the photos of the new roof and the paid bill and got it amended back to full replacement for them. That was a case where the people knew in advance that they needed to replace the roof. I had numerous calls probably a year ago where a company was going out after the sale, and just about every company is going to inspect the house after the policy goes into play. They come out within the first 30 days because they only have a limited time window. If they see something they don't like, they can send cancellation out. And this particular company was nitpicking the roofs. If they didn't like it, you were getting a cancellation saying you got to replace it by this date or else. We like to get to the company before that happens, let them know what's going on and that it would be replaced. And in some cases, if we have a full work order and an approximate date that they're going to start to replace the roof, we can buy them some time and get that roof replaced. So it's something that does need to be talked about before closing and before they sign on the dotted line for their insurance company. So there's no surprises when they go out.
You know, one of the things I just want to bring up that is that if the realtors could tell the inspectors that when they hire an inspector to go out and do the inspection for the closing, the customer says, yes, I want this, and they hire an inspector. The inspectors in the past have always been very vague about the age of the roof, the condition of the roof, and the heating system. They really can't afford to be vague anymore. And I've talked to every time I talk to an inspector, I tell them, and the funny thing is a lot of them say, yeah, we're getting calls after people have closed and the company comes in and does the inspection and says, oh no, we're not going to accept this, we're not going to accept that. And they're coming back to the inspector and saying, hey, why didn't you, tell us that the roof needed this or that? So I think it's if you can get that message out to the inspectors when they do that, that would be really helpful, because that inspection, if the person buying it knows how old the roof is. Neil and I ask all the time, we're like, okay, how old's the roof? And they're like, I don't know. It's,
I have no idea. Never mind.
Yeah, they don't know when it was replaced. They're buying it. They have no idea. So just a little FYI, the roofs, as Neil had said earlier, is a real problem.
Some of the problems we've also encountered, and I had this on a home up up county where there was a lot of tree cover. So the roof had some discoloration to it, and one of the companies gave us a very hard time because of their aerial imagery, thinking the roof was not in good condition, even though he had documentation from the seller as to when the roof was replaced, and it was about 15 years ago. So, you know, if you're in there, if you look at the roof, just give it the eye test. If you see dark areas, you know, that's something that will be needed to be addressed. It could be just discoloration due to shade, but you just want to make sure it's not moss or anything else wrong with the roof.
Okay, great. Well, this has been a really informative presentation, and as I said, we have recorded it and we will be sending it out either this afternoon or tomorrow. But thank you everyone for attending, and our next Breakfast with Benefits is going to be October 8th, and it's going to be all about how to navigate through social media and find out how we can do that. Thank you so much, Joanne and Neil, and thank you all for attending, and
Thank
have a
you.
wonderful day. Bye, everyone.
Take care.